All right, so we've got a ton of articles here all about Nvidia, and wow, you're really interested in their cloud strategy, huh? They're doing some pretty interesting stuff, going way beyond just making graphics cards.
Yeah, it's a pretty big shift.
We're talking about leasing entire data centers, partnering with these, what I call these NeoClouds,
Right, near clouds.
and even building their own AI cloud. It's almost like they want to be the only place you need to go for anything AI. Like, they're taking on Amazon and Google head on.
It is. It's really remarkable how they've put themselves right at the center of this whole AI explosion that's happening. They went from, the company everyone knew for making graphics cards for video games to being like the foundation of all this AI infrastructure.
Yeah, it's a huge change.
Yeah.
So how did they do that? How did they go from GPUs for gamers to powering, well, it seems like almost every AI application out there?
Well, it turns out their main technology, the GPU, is just perfect for the kind of processing that AI needs, especially for machine learning. It's all about doing a ton of calculations at the same time, and that's what GPUs are really good at. And then when AI and all these applications that need tons of data started getting super popular, well, suddenly everyone needed what NVIDIA was making.
So they were in the right place at the right time with the right tech.
Exactly.
But they didn't just stop there, did they? One of these articles talks about this DGX Cloud thing. It sounds like their big AI package deal.
Yeah, that's it exactly. It's their top-of-the-line GPUs, really fast networking, and then every piece of software you could possibly need for AI, like their CUDA platform and a bunch of pre-trained models. It's meant for companies that want to build and train really advanced AI applications, including those large language models everyone's been talking about.
Right, and all of that runs on their new Blackwell architecture, doesn't it?
Yeah.
What's so special about these new GPUs?
So Blackwell is their next generation, and they built it with AI in mind from the very start. It's more than just how powerful it is. They actually designed it to be really efficient for the specific kinds of math that AI needs. For example, with AI, you often have to do these massive multiplications with matrices. And Blackwell has special hardware built in to make those calculations incredibly fast.
That makes a lot of sense. But here's where things get really interesting. They're not just selling the hardware anymore, they're leasing entire data centers. That seems like a pretty wild move for a company that, has always been mainly about making chips. What's the thinking there?
Well, it's a pretty big statement about how much power they want to have, literally. They're leasing huge amounts of space in these data centers. We're talking megawatts of power here.
Wow.
To give you an idea of just how much power that is, 1 megawatt could power something like 1,600 homes.
Okay, yeah, that's a lot.
And they're making these megawatt-plus deals with companies like Digital Realty. I think it shows they really want to be the complete AI provider, not just the hardware guys. They want to control everything from the bottom to the top.
So it's like they're saying, if you want the best AI, you rent space in our data centers, powered by our chips, running our software.
Exactly. And because they're controlling more of that, well, they're going to get a bigger piece of all the money being made in AI. It puts them in a really strong position.
And then there are these NeoClouds that we were talking about before. I'm not really familiar with that term.
Oh, yeah. So NeoClouds are these kind of new cloud service providers that are popping up. They're different because they're only focused on AI and high-performance computing. And they build their entire infrastructure on NVIDIA's technology. CoreWeave is a good example. NVIDIA's put a lot of money into them.
Interesting.
But there are others too, like Lambda Labs, which is more for AI researchers and developers. And Scale, they're all about deep learning and scientific computing.
So not only are they making the technology, but they're supporting the companies that are using that technology to offer these cloud services. They're building a whole network.
Right. And that strategy gives them even more reach. By working with and investing in these neoclouds, they're making sure their technology gets into the hands of a lot more companies and researchers. They're building a whole ecosystem, and that creates this network effect where everyone benefits.
This is starting to sound like a really carefully planned strategy, like they're playing chess, not checkers.
Absolutely. And there's more to it. Another important part is their software, and that's where CUDA comes in.
Okay, so we're back, and we're diving even deeper into NVIDIA's AI strategy. It's pretty clear they're thinking about everything. Hardware, those partnerships, even data centers. But you were just starting to talk about CUDA.
Right.
Can you remind me what that is again? And why is it so important in all of this?
CUDA is really what makes their whole software side of things work. I mean, it started as just a programming language, but it's become so much more than that. Now it's like this whole platform with hundreds of libraries that are specifically for AI. And they've even got these pre-built models that developers can use.
Okay, I see. So they're basically building an entire world for anyone who wants to develop AI, right? With all the tools and resources they could possibly need.
You got it. And this approach has a name. It's sometimes called the walled garden.
Walled garden.
Yeah, it's like, think about Apple and their App Store.
Okay, yeah.
Apple has a lot of control over it, right?
Yeah.
But it gives developers a huge audience and tons of tools to make really cool apps.
Right.
Nvidia is doing something similar with their AI ecosystem. So on the one hand, it's super easy for developers to use their platform and build things, but it also makes it pretty hard to switch to something else.
That's what you meant by walled garden.
Exactly. Once a company really gets into using CUA and building on top of Nvidia's stuff, it would be really hard to switch to a competitor. Like, imagine how much work and money that would take.
That's a really smart move, especially with AI becoming, well, pretty much essential to how businesses do things now.
Yeah.
But is there a downside to this whole approach? Could it end up hurting them if they're not open enough?
There are always trade-offs, right?
Right.
The biggest risk here is that it might slow down innovation over time. If everyone's stuck using only Nvidia's way of doing things, well, maybe we'll miss out on some really creative new ideas for AI that would come from a more open system.
Yeah, I see what you mean. It's kind of like a double-edged sword. They've made this really powerful and efficient system, but it could limit the variety of ideas in AI.
Exactly. It'll be really interesting to see what they do going forward. Will they open things up more to encourage different approaches, or are they going to stick with this controlled system? A lot of people are watching to see what they do.
It's a big gamble for sure. So let's zoom out a little. We talked before about how Nvidia is taking on those huge cloud companies like Amazon, Microsoft, and Google. But aren't those companies putting a ton of money into AI too? How can Nvidia really compete with giants like that?
You're right. All the big cloud companies are investing a lot in AI, but there's a big difference in how they're doing it. They're kind of trying to be everything for everyone, offering every kind of cloud service you could possibly need.
Right.
Nvidia is different. They're completely focused on AI. Like, their whole goal is to build the absolute best possible infrastructure for developing and using AI.
So is it kind of like if you compare it to shopping, they're like a specialized boutique?
Mm-hmm.
While the cloud giants are more like a massive department store that has a little bit of everything.
Yeah, that's a good way to think about it. And when it comes to AI, where speed and efficiency are so important, being that specialized can be a big advantage. It means that NVIDIA can design their hardware, their software, their entire data center strategy in a way that those bigger cloud companies just can't.
But couldn't the cloud giants just try to catch up? They've got so much money.
Oh, they definitely could. And they are trying in some ways. They're building their own AI chips, their own AI platforms. They're even buying up AI startups left and right. But NVIDIA has a head start, They've been at this for years, and it's not something you can just learn to do overnight.
Okay, so let's say, for argument's sake, that NVIDIA's plan works perfectly. Their AI cloud becomes the industry standard. What happens then? What would that mean for the future of AI?
That could completely change the game.
Yeah.
If they become the go-to platform for AI, they'd have a massive amount of influence on how AI is developed, how it's used, even how it's regulated. It would give them so much power.
It's like they would become the operating system for AI,
Yeah,
right? Setting all the rules and controlling everything.
Yeah, exactly.
Wow.
But that also means they have a lot of responsibility. They'd have to think really carefully about the ethics of their technology and make sure that it's used for the right reasons.
One of the articles we read mentioned that NVIDIA wants to do more than just provide the infrastructure. They're developing their own AI applications and services too. What's that all about?
Oh, yeah, that's right. They're moving up the value chain. They're making AI-powered solutions for specific industries like healthcare, self-driving cars, and finance.
Oh, interesting.
Like, they've created AI models that can help discover new drugs, systems for autonomous driving, and ways to detect fraud.
So they're not just building the road, they're building the cars that'll drive on them too. They really want to be the one-stop shop for all things AI.
Precisely. They want to be involved in every part of AI, from the chips to the software to the actual applications people use. That's what makes their strategy so exciting and maybe even a little bit scary, because it could completely disrupt the whole industry.
This has been really eye-opening. We've covered so much about NVIDIA. But before we wrap things up, there's one more thing I want to go back to.
Okay.
We talk about that walled garden idea, and how it might have some drawbacks.
Yeah.
It seems like Nvidia is in a tricky position. They need to keep control, but they also need to make sure that AI keeps moving forward and that new ideas keep coming.
It is a tough balance to strike. Having a controlled ecosystem definitely helps things develop quickly, but it can also hold back creativity and limit the different ways people approach AI.
So how do you think they can do both? How can they encourage more openness without giving up too much control?
That's a great question. One way might be to put money into programs that support open source AI development. They could also work with universities and research groups to encourage all sorts of different approaches to AI, even ones that might not directly benefit them.
It sounds like they need to find a way to have their cake and eat it too. They need to stay in control, but also make sure the AI world is growing and changing in a healthy way.
Exactly. Finding that balance is going to be key for them in the long run. They can't forget about the potential problems of a closed system, but they also need to keep pushing the boundaries of what's possible with AI.
It's a fascinating challenge, and it's going to be really interesting to see how they handle it. The world of AI is constantly evolving, and Nvidia is right in the middle of it all. Okay, so we're back for the last part of our deep dive into Nvidia. And wow, we've covered a lot, haven't we? We talked about their tech, their partners, their whole data center strategy, even how they might be changing the future of AI.
Yeah, it's been a pretty wild ride.
It really seems like Nvidia is more than just a company that's along for the ride with AI. They're actually steering the ship, you know?
I agree. The choices they're making are going to have a huge impact on the entire industry.
It's pretty amazing to think about. They started with graphics cards, and now they're leading the way in this whole world of AI.
It really shows how much they were willing to adapt and take risks. They saw the potential of AI early on and jumped right in.
One thing I keep coming back to is how smart they are about their partnerships. They're working with the big cloud companies like Amazon and Google, but they're also supporting all these smaller, specialized NeoCloud startups. It's like they're hedging their bets on all sides.
It's definitely a smart move. Partnering with those huge companies means their technology is going to be everywhere, reaching tons of people. And at the same time, they're helping those smaller companies grow and try new things.
Yeah, it's like they're creating this web where everyone can use AI, no matter if they're a single developer or a giant company.
It's a win-win for them and for the whole AI community. They're expanding their reach, showing off what their technology can do, and they're helping create this exciting new space for AI to develop.
But we've also talked about some of the potential problems they might run into, right? Like with the walled garden thing.
Right.
It can be really good for making sure things are efficient and controlled, but it can also stifle creativity and slow down progress if they're not careful. So how can they prevent that from happening? How can they keep their dominance from stifling innovation in the whole AI field?
That's the big question, isn't it? It's a tough balance to find.
Yeah.
They need to encourage openness and collaboration while still keeping control of their system.
So what if they did something like a hybrid approach? They could have their main platform that's tightly controlled, but then they could create open interfaces or ATIs that let developers build on top of it and customize things.
Yeah, that's one way they could do it.
Right.
They could also invest in open source AI projects or give developers reasons to create tools that work well with their platform. Maybe even create partnerships with universities and research institutions to encourage different ideas and approaches.
It's pretty clear that Nvidia has a huge amount of power in the AI world, and their choices are going to affect everyone.
Absolutely. It's a lot of responsibility, and they need to be careful. It's important to foster a healthy AI ecosystem that benefits everyone.
So if our listeners could only take away one thing from all of this, what would you say it is?
I'd say the biggest takeaway is this. Keep your eye on Nvidia. They're not just going along with the AI wave, they're creating it. What they're doing is ambitious, bold, and it could change everything. No matter who you are, whether you're a developer, an investor, or just someone interested in the future of technology, if you want to understand where AI is going, you have to understand what Nvidia is doing.
I think another really important thing we've learned is that specialization is becoming more and more crucial in tech. The fact that Nvidia is so focused on AI has allowed them to become experts in a way that those bigger tech companies who are trying to do a million things at once just can't match.
That's a great point. When technology is changing so fast, it's really hard to be good at everything.
Right.
Companies that choose to specialize are going to have a big advantage.
Well, there you have it, folks. Our journey into Nvidia's AI cloud has come to an end.
It's been a great discussion.
We've talked about their technology, how they're approaching the market, and what it all means for the future. But remember, this is just the beginning. There's a whole lot more to explore when it comes to NVIDIA.
Yeah.
So what are you most curious about? What do you want to know more about? Let us know. Maybe it'll inspire our next deep dive.
Thanks for listening. See you next time.